That evening, as I was preparing dinner, I asked Michael what he wanted to eat. Normally, a child would say something like hamburger or fried chicken, something they like, but Michael seemed somehow uneasy. It wasn't so much that he was hesitant, but more like he was confused by my question. "What's the matter? You can tell me your favorite. Grandma will make anything for you." Even after asking him that, he didn't answer, so I felt as if pressing him any further would be like scolding him, so I didn't ask anymore and told him to wait while watching TV in the living room. Somehow, I prepared a menu that seemed child-friendly, and decided it was time to call Michael for dinner. However, even with dinner laid out in front of him, Michael didn't seem to want to sit down at all. "What's wrong? Don't you want to eat?" At my question, he shook his head vigorously from side to side. "Then why?" Then, with a puzzled expression, Michael asked me, "Grandma, is it okay for me to eat today?" At Michael's words, I wondered if my ears were playing tricks on me, and I couldn't help but suspect I was going deaf or hearing things. However, when I asked again to be sure, the response I got from Michael confirmed that I had not misheard. "Huh? A day when it's okay to eat? We eat 3 meals a day, right?" When I asked back with another question, Michael suddenly ran out into the garden from the window and started pulling out the grass. Surprised by Michael's sudden action, I held his grass-pulling body and took him back inside the house. "Why? What's wrong?" "Grandma, I'm hungry." "You're hungry, right? That's why I prepared it for you, Michael." "So why did you start pulling out the grass?" "Because my mom always says I can't eat unless I help out with something." I couldn't hide my surprise at the unexpected words that came out of Michael's mouth. When I decided to ask for more details, I learned an astonishing truth. When I was 22, I fell in love at first sight with my husband, who had transferred from another region to the company where I was working, and I desperately approached him both at work and privately. Coincidentally, we lived close to each other, and before we knew it, even when our work hours didn't match, we started to meet somewhere and go home together. One day, on a crowded train, he overlapped his body with mine to protect me, and my heartbeat wouldn't stop. In the middle of the crowd, I whispered, "Would you go out with me?" I clenched the sleeve of his suit tightly, and with eyes that were slightly teary from embarrassment, I confessed. I must have had a sly look on my face at that time. But he blushed at my words and said, "I'd love to, Lily." Without minding the eyes of others, we kissed. We started dating smoothly. After that, everything was quick. We started living together shortly after we started dating, got married in the first year, and were blessed with a child. I had always dreamed of getting married and living a happy life since I was a child, and I was overjoyed to be blessed with a child, and we both decided on the name Sam for the child. It was truly a moment of supreme happiness. However, that happiness didn't last long. When Sam was 3 years old, I found it strange that my husband was always coming home unusually late. I asked a friend who worked at the same company as my husband to investigate for me. It turned out that my husband always left the company at the regular time, and a friend witnessed him disappearing into a hotel with a younger girl from the same department after work. It was then that I first learned that the reason my husband was always coming home late was that he was meeting with that younger woman. It was clear proof of an affair. When I confronted him about the affair with all the evidence, he gave in and admitted to the affair. My happy married life turned out to be just a 4-year game of house, and I took Sam and decided to separate from my husband. Becoming a single mother, I desperately balanced work and household chores while raising Sam. Seeing me working hard on chores and jobs, Sam, despite being a child, helped around the house as much as possible, striving to reduce my burden. I fondly remember bursting into tears in front of other parents during an elementary school open class when I heard his composition about his future dream, which was to make it easier for me, his mother. As Sam grew up healthily, he eventually reached an age where he showed his maturity by inviting his longtime girlfriend, whom he wanted to marry, to our house. "This is Emily." "Mom, I've been thinking about marrying Emily." Emily, who was introduced to me, spoke briskly and had a clear and bold personality, which left a good impression on me. "Sam, if you say this is the person you've chosen, I won't oppose." She responds briskly, so it's good, right? Really? So, you're giving your blessing for us to get married? Yes. In return, make sure to be happy because I doubt you'll find anyone better than her. I know. Emily, let's build a happy family together from now on. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Roberts. From my perspective, Sam and Emily seemed to be a good match, so I instinctively approved of their marriage, sending them off to a bright future. Congratulations on your wedding, Sam, Emily. At their wedding, memories of the past were revived, and I was shedding big tears during a moment that was both joyful and embarrassing. 1 year after the happy occasion, a third beloved family member, Michael, was born to the couple. I was present at Michael's birth, along with Sam, and seeing Michael being born, crying tears of joy, is a memory I cherish. However, the fact that Sam, who loves children, cried more than Emily, who worked hard during the childbirth, was a sight that made me happy as a mother. A few years later, I received a call from Sam. He explained that he would be working alone out of state for a while and asked if I could occasionally check on Emily and Michael. I think it'll be fine, but Michael is reaching an age where he needs more attention, and I'm worried about various things. So, it doesn't have to be every day, but I'd like you to check on them about once a week. I certainly understood Sam's concern. Indeed, Sam was quite a handful as a child, and the moment I took my eyes off him, he would quickly go somewhere. Taking care of a child during their most active and sensitive period is overwhelming for a single woman. Until now, Sam had been taking care of them, and they had managed somehow, but with him going away for work, it's understandable that Sam, who tends to worry, would become anxious. I understand, it's your request, Sam. And I want to see my adorable grandson as well. Relieved, Sam left for his out-of-state assignment, and I started visiting Emily and Michael on weekends. It felt odd going to their house empty-handed. So I packed some snacks that Michael would like and some preserved foods in containers for the two of them. When I rang the doorbell and looked into the camera of the monitor-equipped intercom, Emily appeared at the entrance with noisy footsteps. Ms. Roberts, what brings you here today? Sam asked me to check on you guys. Oh, I see. It's a bit messy, and I'm sorry, but please come in. I felt a slight discomfort at Emily's momentarily troubled expression, but upon reflection, it's natural to react that way to an almost unannounced visit. When I entered the house, Michael, who was playing with crayons in the living room, greeted me with a smile. I hadn't seen Michael for a while, and as expected, he had grown taller. His face, once so adorable that it could be mistaken for a girl's, had now matured into that of a mischievous boy. Here, I brought some snacks and made some preserved dishes. Feel free to eat them. Wow, I'm sorry. Sam really worries too much. Please make yourself comfortable today. At Emily's suggestion, I enjoyed playing board games and card games with Michael, and watching his favorite anime, making the most of our reunion. In the evening, we filled the dining table with the preserved dishes I brought and the food Emily and I cooked together, and had dinner. As the three of us started having dinner, I felt a slight oddness in the way Michael voraciously dug into the prepared meal. It was as if the images of hungry children I see on educational programs during lunchtime, from overseas, somehow overlapped with what I was seeing. However, that is limited to the foreign orphans, as Michael has a proper mother, Emily. It's impossible to think that he hasn't been fed properly. Michael, you don't have to eat so fast, no one is going to take it away from you. I encouraged him to eat slowly as he desperately dug into his meal, but it seemed as if my words fell on deaf ears as he continued to be engrossed with the food in front of him. Michael has been going through a growth spurt recently, and he always eats like this. I guess my discipline is lacking, I apologize. Oh, it's a growth spurt. Well, it's that age where you have to eat a lot to grow big and strong, right? Convinced by the growth spurt explanation, I moved some side dishes from my plate to Michael's. After finishing dinner and cleaning up while chatting with Emily, I played a little more with Michael before it was time for my bus home. I decided to go home that day. Several months later, I received a rare call from Emily. Ms. Roberts, I'm sorry for the sudden request. Actually, Sam seems to have fallen ill while he was out, and I need to go take care of him. Could you look after Michael for a while? I'm completely fine, but is Sam okay? Should I go instead? Thinking that Emily might have her hands full with Michael, I offered to go instead, but she shook her head, saying that she couldn't bother me with that, and left Michael in my care. I can understand her feelings of worry about her husband possibly collapsing from ill health in a distant land. Understanding Emily's feelings, I promised to take good care of Michael and decided to leave Sam's care to Emily. Emily probably won't be able to communicate for a while because she will be busy taking care of Sam, so I was strangely told to contact her if anything happened. Although I had some doubts, I thought it might be a sign that she wanted me to fully take over Sam's care, so I saw off Emily, who was heading to Sam's side with Michael. Do you think Dad will be okay? I'm sure he'll be fine, don't worry. Your dad has always been strong, even when he caught a cold, he would recover quickly. And your mom will be with him, so there's no need to worry. I reassured a worried Michael and took him to my house. It had been several months since we last met. I felt a bit guilty towards Sam but decided to make the most of this brief time and create happy memories. Michael, when we get to Grandma's house, do you want to play with the toys I used to play with when I was little? Being a person who takes good care of things, I had stored toys and board games from my childhood and Sam's as precious memories, and had recently cleaned them up, intending to let Michael play with them when he reached the appropriate age. Really? I want to play! Yay! Relieved to see the worried expression on Michael's face changed to one of joy at the mention of old toys. We arrived at my house, and immediately began playing with the nostalgic pieces and board games, and watching cartoons that Michael wanted to see. Spending a relaxing time together. That night, as I prepared dinner, I asked Michael what he wanted to eat. Ordinarily, a child would mention their favorite food, like hamburgers or fried chicken, but Michael seemed unusually hesitant, looking more confused than reluctant at my question. What's wrong? You can tell me your favorite food, I'll make anything you want. Despite my reassurance, he didn't answer, so, not wanting to pressure him, I told him to wait in the living room and watch TV while I prepared a menu that children usually like. Once everything was ready and laid out on the table, I called Michael for dinner. But he didn't make any move to sit down. What's the matter, don't you want to eat? He shook his head vigorously. Then, why? Then, with a puzzled expression, he asked me, Grandma, is it okay for me to eat today? I was so shocked by Michael's question that I wondered if there was something wrong with my hearing and suspected that I might have misunderstood him. However, when I asked him again, the response I received confirmed that I had not misheard. You're asking if it's okay to eat? We usually eat 3 meals a day, right? As I asked him again, he suddenly ran out into the garden and started pulling out grass. Surprised by Michael's sudden action, I stopped him, hugging his grass-pulling body, and brought him back inside. Why can't I do that? Grandma, I'm hungry. You're hungry, aren't you? That's why I prepared this for you, Michael. So, why did you start weeding? Well, because Mom always says that I can't eat unless I help out. I couldn't hide my surprise at the unexpected words that came out of Michael's mouth, so I decided to ask for more details. According to him, after Sam left for his business trip, Emily started forcing Michael to help around the house and be a good boy, or else she wouldn't feed him. So, Michael would wait for Emily to leave and then search for any edible food left in the house, and if there was none, he would wait until she came back. Tears of sadness flowed uncontrollably from my eyes as I listened to my grandson's shocking living conditions and remembered my previous visit to Emily's house. Back then, she had said that he was eating a lot because he was growing, but I realized that it was probably because he hadn't eaten until then. I regretted not noticing the signs earlier and pretending to understand, not realizing Michael's true feelings. I felt a surge of regret, self-reproach, and anger towards Emily. It's okay, Michael. You might not understand now, but your mom is wrong. You don't have to help or be a good boy to eat. You're growing up, after all. I reassured Michael and sat him down again, and we enjoyed a hearty dinner together, followed by watching anime and sharing a watermelon dessert. After making sure Michael had fallen asleep, I texted Sam to update him on the situation and reminded him to contact me as soon as he felt better. I was told by Emily not to contact her unless I reached out first, but I couldn't keep that promise anymore. Soon after texting Sam, he called back. I had thought for sure that Sam's health was so bad that Emily was even managing his phone, but when he got in touch right away, I felt a bit relieved. Mom? What's going on? Michael hasn't been fed while I'm away? There's nothing more to it. It's exactly as I texted you. Isn't Emily there with you? Ha, Emily? There's no way she's here with me on my business trip. I told you I was leaving the two of you in your care, didn't I? There was a discrepancy between what Emily had told me and what Sam was saying. Emily said she was going to take care of you on your business trip because you were sick and left Michael with me. Sick? There's no way I'm sick. Besides, if I were, I would have contacted you. Indeed, that made sense. If something had happened, Sam would have definitely contacted me. But this time, there was no communication from him, and I only found out about his supposed illness from Emily. And thinking about it, it was strange that Emily said she couldn't contact us because she was taking care of Sam. It felt like she was trying to keep us at a distance and hide something. Actually, I just remembered that Emily told me not to come home during the long holiday. Do you think? Finally, we both realized that Emily had been lying to us. Moreover, Michael mentioned that Emily had been going out at night, which was news to Sam. As we talked, I could feel Sam's anger towards Emily through the phone. After hearing everything, Sam decided to take a day off and come back home the next day. The following morning, Sam visited my house and greeted Michael at the door. Seeing his son, Sam's eyes welled up with tears as he hugged him tightly. Dad, welcome home. What happened? Michael, I'm sorry for being such a helpless father. It seemed that Sam had already made up his mind after our conversation last night. He was determined to divorce Emily, who had been treating their son so poorly while going out at night. Considering that Emily hadn't been in contact with Sam and was nowhere to be found, it was likely that she was having an affair while Sam was away on his business trip. So, Sam decided to search for evidence at home. Sam searched through Emily's room and the closets at home, where she might have hidden things, but although she had taken precautions regarding physical evidence, it was clear from checking the PC history that she had made a hotel reservation. Since the reservation was only for 2 people, the possibility arose that she might be staying overnight with her affair partner. That was the only evidence, but it was more than enough to suspect an affair. Based on that evidence, Sam requested a private detective agency to investigate the affair. A week later, unaware that Sam knew everything, Emily contacted me saying, "Sam is feeling better, so I will return home tomorrow." I immediately forwarded the message to Sam, who took a leave of absence from work and waited at my house for Emily to come and pick up Michael. Emily, who was unaware of what was about to unfold, came to my house, which was about to become a battleground, with high spirits. "Michael, I came to pick you up." Emily made eye contact with Sam, who was showing an angry expression at the door. To prevent Emily from escaping from the scene, I locked the entrance door and led her to the back of the room to have a discussion. "I heard everything from Michael. It seems you didn't give him a proper meal while I was away," Sam said, confronting Emily with tremendous anger, to which Emily muttered in a small voice, "It was discipline." Angered by her attitude of not making eye contact, Sam presented copies of the hotel reservation for 2 people found in the PC history and the results of the affair investigation by the private detective agency, and demanded a divorce and custody of Michael. "I can't trust you with Michael. When I think about something happening to him, I can't stay calm." "Wait a minute. That's too harsh. I didn't do this because I wanted to." "So, were you being blackmailed by the other person? Is that why you were having a good time at the hotel with someone you didn't even like? Isn't that too convenient? I had a hard time too. Since you went away, I had to take care of the house and Michael all by myself, and I got tired." Emily explained that she had vented her frustration on Michael and sought solace in an affair because she had to take care of everything alone since Sam went on a work assignment alone. Infuriated by her attempt to gain sympathy, Sam threw several photos of a man on the floor. It turned out that Emily had been going out at night when Sam couldn't come home from work and had been secretly seen talking happily with her boyfriend, which was revealed by Michael. Do you still say the same thing with all this evidence? I'll say it one more time. We're getting a divorce. I'll take custody of Michael. Got it? I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want. I'm going to marry the man who loves me, Emily said, throwing Sam's words back at him, and stormed out of my house with her face red with anger after unlocking the door. Michael seemed to stop Emily for a moment, but I gently held him back. Michael looked at me with a questioning face, but I just stared straight into his eyes and shook my head. Daddy, did you and Mommy have a fight? Michael, who did not fully understand the situation, looked at Sam with a puzzled expression. Listen, Michael. You may not understand it now, but your dad and Mom didn't have a fight. We said goodbye. But from now on, we will live happily together, just the two of us. Okay? Sam, not wanting to cause any more stress or worry to Michael, spoke to him with a smile while patting his head. I could only stand by and watch, but seeing Sam's kindness, I decided to support them as much as possible from behind. Later, additional investigation results from the detective agency revealed that Emily's affair partner was apparently married. Emily believed in her affair partner, but he chose to rebuild his relationship with his wife, leaving her abandoned. Emily tried to mend her relationship with Sam again, but was issued a restraining order by a lawyer, leaving her with no choice but to live alone. Sam, realizing he couldn't leave Michael alone after this incident, changed jobs to full remote work and decided to live together with the three of us in my house. Michael, who was attached to me, was initially confused, but as time went by, he got used to the environment, and now he often knows more about where things are placed in the house than Sam does, and is frequently asked by Sam about the location of things like nail clippers. To make sure Michael doesn't go hungry like before, I try to cook warm, homemade meals every day, and the three of us enjoy our meals while having a pleasant conversation. I don't want Michael to have to gauge people's moods and expressions while hungry anymore. And I hope we never have to see Michael like that again. Hoping that only warm memories of family will remain in Michael's heart, I cook delicious meals every day, watch Michael and Sam stuff their mouths full and fill their stomachs, and feel happiness from the bottom of my heart. I can't go on living. The voice muttered so softly that I almost missed it. Come home. I tried to sound as cheerful and upbeat as possible, but my voice quivered. A quiet silence ensued. Is it okay? With a hesitant voice, I couldn't help but shed a tear. This is your home too, you know. After that, there were no words, we just cried together. My son, looking somewhat embarrassed as he opened the front door, seemed to have put on more weight than when we last lived together. No, that's not right. Upon closer look, he was swollen. His father and mother-in-law had been siphoning off his salary, and he had been surviving on instant noodles for all 3 meals. It's impossible for anyone to maintain physical and mental health in such a situation. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath to contain my anger. I've been put through a lot by my husband and mother-in-law, but this was the first time I felt this enraged. A mother's role is to protect her son. Just 2 more months. With determination, I opened my eyes and said to my son, "Can you hang in there for just 2 more months? By then, those 2 will be going down to hell. No, they'll probably send themselves there. My name is Mary, 50 years old. I work in accounting at a company and live alone in an old 2-bedroom apartment in New York. Although I live alone now, I have a husband and a child. Up to a year and a half ago, our family of 4 lived in this cramped apartment. My husband, Tom, who's 2 years my senior, is a corporate employee and holds the position of sales director. He had his issues before we got married, but after tying the knot, he became the very definition of a workaholic. However, he dumped all the household responsibilities on me, even though I also worked full-time. I was the one who attended all our son John's school events, taking off from work when necessary. Our son John is turning 24 this year. Ever since he was a little boy, he was quite the rascal, often coming home with his clothes covered in mud. Even when I'd come home exhausted from work, his clothes and body would be gritty. When I'd brush my hand over his head, sand would fall out. Get in the shower right now. If there's one good thing about this rundown apartment, it's that it has a proper bathroom. Even when I scolded him, John would just laugh and say with an innocent smile, "Let's eat dinner first, Mom." Mischievous yet so endearing. Seeing my son smile, it felt like all the exhaustion from work just melted away. Then there's my other family member, my mother-in-law, Linda. She was the root cause of why I ended up living alone like this. She retired and started living with us when John was 6 years old. Tom, having grown up just with his mother, was somewhat of a mama's boy. When Linda called saying she wanted to move in, Tom didn't consult with me and just said, "Sure," without a second thought. "Why did you agree without discussing it with me?" Seeing my frowned face, Tom showed an angry expression. "Why are you against living with my mom? What's your reason? She raised me on her own, working hard as a single mother," he argued passionately. "But our apartment is small, and John's at that mischievous age. I wonder if Linda wouldn't get tired of it all," I said hesitantly, trying to argue my point. I always loved how devoted Tom was to his mom, but realistically, living with 4 people in this tiny apartment seemed impossible. "Is that all?" Tom laughed. "My mom doesn't care about small spaces. The apartment we used to live in was old and run down. She worked hard so we could move to a better place. We're working hard to buy a condo, she'll understand. She's retired, she'll probably help out around the house." Tom continued. "Mary, you're working too. It'll probably make things easier." Hearing that, I felt a bit relieved, thinking, he's considered my feelings too. But then Linda, entering the room with her bags, said, "Oh my, what a small and messy place. I told you, right? We're working hard to buy a nice, new condo." Tom explained, his face reddening as he tried to make light of the situation. "Well, it's been how long since you two got married? 7 years? 8 years? And you still haven't saved enough?" She looked at me disapprovingly. "Mary, you're working, right? I raised this boy on just my salary." Then she had an idea. "Maybe you should cover the living expenses with just your salary, Mary. That way, all of Tom's earnings can go towards the condo." I can't do that," I began, but Tom grabbed my shoulder. "Brilliant idea, Mom. You did raise me on a single income." I thought he must be out of his mind. Linda had raised just 1 child. And she probably had some support being a single mother. Now they're asking me to cover the expenses for 4 people on just my salary. But to prevent being ridiculed further by Linda, Tom desperately tried to convince me. "With this plan, that luxury condo isn't just a dream anymore. Thanks to Mom, she'll take care of John, and we can push forward." "That's right. You two will work hard. I'm here, and I'll take care of John," Linda said, patting John's head. I sighed softly. Reluctantly, I agreed. If Linda would take care of John and help around the house, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But then, my back hurts. I guess I'm getting old. Recently, I've been feeling dizzy. I worked and did housework and childcare. Maybe it's time for me to relax a bit. Turns out, she kept making excuses and didn't do any housework. Tom said, "She's not feeling well, can't help it," and asked me to do more chores. "At least help out, Tom. I'm the sole breadwinner for our family of 4, and I gotta do overtime. If you're gonna say that, I'm also working hard to buy a luxury condo. You have no idea how tiring sales can be." Tom snapped back. The goal had shifted from a new condo to a luxury new condo. I was so frustrated. Thinking this was Linda's influence. Looking back, I felt I did my best. Once John started school, Linda would often go out with her new friends. They got along well, going to luncheons and spa trips. She not only used her pension but also asked Tom for money. "Are you feeling better?" I'd ask. She'd retort, "I'm going to the spa because I'm not." "She bullies me," Linda would complain to Tom, who'd scold me. "You're such a mean wife." From then on, they'd blame me for everything: not doing house chores, late meals, bad food. When I scolded John for misbehaving, Linda would defend him. "Don't bother listening to that clueless person," she said. "This is for education." She ignored my protest. "Your grandma got you some candies over there." With that, she pampered John. Well, he's just a kid. Naturally, he'd be more attached to a grandma who always spoils him than a nagging mother like me. Gradually, he stopped listening to me, and Linda even took him away from me. John started working after graduating from college last year. And then, out of the blue, he announced, "We bought a brand new luxury condo, so we're gonna move." "We?" I found the way he phrased it odd. I had suspected for several days that the three of them were up to something. "Yeah. Oh, and we'll leave the furniture and appliances for you to use. We'll buy new ones." I couldn't help but wonder why I had put up with this for so long. Still, the idea of finally being free from these two overwhelmed me. People must wonder why I never divorced. Of course, I had brought up divorce before. But Tom, always concerned about what others think, never agreed. "That's one reason." "And the second reason?" he said. "If we divorce, you'll never see John again." No matter how much they despised me, or looked down on me with mocking eyes, John was my son. The thought of never seeing him again was unbearable. I wanted to witness his growth. But now, he's an adult. He can earn his own money and make decisions for himself. I believed he would do just fine. Take care. I waved goodbye to the three of them with a smile. A year and a half later, I received a letter. "Let's divorce." That's all it said, along with the business card of the lawyer. Tom, now holding a position as a department head, surely cares about public opinion. Even so, to send such a letter. After all this time refusing to divorce, I was flabbergasted by his audacity. Did he finally cross a line? I pondered as I opened my apartment door. Suddenly, my cell rang. The screen showed John's name. I answered immediately. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. I repeated, "Hello? John?" After a moment, I heard quiet sobbing. "Mom, help me." "What?" "I can't take it anymore." On the other side of the phone, my son John, who should have been a proud adult, was crying. His stifled sobs were audible, interspersed with him trying to swallow his tears. His choked-up voice resonated through the receiver. "Something happened? How about your dad and grandma?" "They're out having dinner together." "Dinner? Just the two of them? What about you? Did you already eat?" "I'm eating now. Instant noodles." "Oh. I couldn't understand the meaning. Neither the reason for the call nor why he was crying. "John, what's going on? Can you explain slowly?" I finally grasped the situation after listening to John's hesitant explanation. In their new place, a luxury condo, those jerks were enjoying themselves, and they were forcing John to endure the same treatment they had done to me. No, it was even worse. I could at least cook meals within my means. Of course, not luxurious meals with premium ingredients. But I managed to prepare enough for 4 people using discounted or inexpensive ingredients. When I got a job, Grandma said we should open a bank account for my paycheck. So, we did it together. She said I'd need to pitch in for the household expenses. I thought, well, it's Grandma. I even entrusted her with my ATM card. It was fine at first. I even received an allowance. But then, gradually, my allowance kept decreasing. Meals that used to be ready-made and laid out on the table disappeared. For a while now, I've not been receiving any allowance and have been eating instant noodles for all 3 meals. John chuckled weakly. I even bring instant noodles to work every single day. My colleagues tease me about it. I just laugh it off saying, I love instant noodles, you know? Living in such a luxury condo, and yet. John continued with a self-deprecating laugh. I can't go on anymore. His voice was so soft, I almost missed it. Excuse me? I was about to ask, but I didn't. I couldn't just say. What are you talking about? Instead of blaming or scolding my son, I said as a mother. Come back home. I tried to sound as cheerful and upbeat as possible, but my voice trembled. A heavy silence followed. Is it okay? I couldn't hold back the tears hearing his hesitant voice. What are you talking about? This time, I said it. This is your home too. After that, there were no words. We just cried together. The next day, my son, looking somewhat embarrassed as he opened the front door, seemed to have put on more weight than when we last lived together. No, that's not right. After staring at him for a while, I realized he was swollen, not fat. Being exploited for his paycheck by his husband and mother-in-law, he only ate instant noodles for all 3 meals. There's no way he could maintain a healthy body and mind with that. Are you okay? Well, not really. I've got a headache, and I'm feeling dizzy. He added with a troubled smile. Lately, I've been running out of breath easily too. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to suppress my anger. I've been through a lot with my husband and mother-in-law, but this was the first time I felt this angry. A mother's duty is to protect her child. Just 2 more months. I opened my eyes determinedly and said to my son, can you bear with it for just 2 more months? If he did, we could send those 2 to hell. Or better yet, they'll dig their own grave. The first thing I did was contact a divorce lawyer. Then, I had John write his resignation letter. Okay? Eat instant noodles at home as you've been doing, but try to eat something nutritious at work. Saying that, I handed him some money. Don't let those 2 find out you have this money, okay? I had an appointment to meet Tom. We agreed to meet at a cafe after work. It's been a while. Looking at Tom, who had taken the seat across from me, I thought, I knew it. He looked every bit the man living in a luxury condo, dressed in a high-end suit. Still, he's as vain as ever, always worrying about what others think. Such a shallow man. How's John doing? When I asked, he responded with, of course he's doing well. He's got his own room now and is living comfortably. I just wish he'd marry soon so we can live together. I'd be happy to see my grandkids. You? Happy to have grandkids? Weren't you indifferent to parenting? I laughed sarcastically. What's with the attitude? I don't want to fight when we're seeing each other after so long. How's your mom? Cutting him off, I quickly asked. Oh, she's doing well too. Said she was going out with a friend for an overnight trip. Oh, really? As I expected, they both seemed to be living their usual carefree lives. Honestly, like mother, like son. This man, who's likely pleased about our divorce, doesn't realize the situation he's in. He should be asking to live with me again, but remains oblivious. By the way, about that apartment. I'm thinking of giving it up. I need your signature for it. Sure, I have no attachment to that old, rundown place. All right. I'll handle the paperwork. I'll mail you the documents, so please sign and send them back. Okay, got it. Well, I should get going. Standing up with the check in hand, as a final gesture of goodwill. I didn't get a thank you. Tom just looked up at me. You're leaving just like that? We might not see each other again. Yes, I have to go home and cook my own dinner. You should treat yourself to eating out once in a while. Looking down coldly at Tom as he sipped his coffee, I remarked. I can't shake off my frugal habits. Turning my back on the man who laughed mockingly, I suddenly remembered. Oh, right. And turned back to him. I was invited by an acquaintance to play some slot machines recently. I actually won a few $100s. Surprisingly, slots are kinda easy. This comment got the most reaction since we met today. Right? They're addictive, aren't they? If you want, I'll go with you next time. You're joking, right? I sharply retorted. Go into the slots with my ex-husband who I divorced? Not in a million years. With that, I turned my back and started walking away. Now, the seed has been planted. Whether that seed withers or grows into a massive tree, it's up to you, Tom. 2 months later, I approached John, who was holding a bouquet of flowers. Finished with your last shift? Yeah. They even threw me a farewell party. Made me realize it was a pretty decent job. Maybe you wanted to stay longer? No, it's okay. I got an offer from another company last week, so I'm gonna start fresh next week. John had been discreetly moving his essential belongings, trying not to alert Tom and Linda. All he had was a single bag. It was just the right amount to leave his painful past behind. John left home this morning as usual. He applied for a new bank account for his paycheck and severance pay. The reason he never changed his bank account before was because he believed that the greedy Tom and Linda would never allow it. If they kicked him out, he thought he would be penniless and homeless. Living in such a toxic environment probably clouded his judgment. Even if he had come to my apartment, he'd likely be found and dragged back. So, I asked him to keep living his life until he could move to a new place. Shall we go now? I finished moving during the day. I handed the keys to the new place to John. Amazing, Mom. Buying a condo in just 2 months? It's a used one, and it's not that big with just 2 bedrooms and a living room. And we'll have to pay for it for a while. Still, it's money I saved up over the past year and a half, almost entirely for myself. I initially thought it might be for John's wedding, but using it as a down payment for the condo isn't bad. I'll help with the payments. You made me a co-owner of the condo after all. Let's not push ourselves too hard. Yeah, we'll be okay if we're together. Our new life together began that day. A few months after I started living with John. The doorbell, ringing persistently just after I returned from work. Was Tom and Linda on the intercom screen. With an angry face, Linda shouted, "Mary, open up!" The aggressive knocking would have disturbed the neighbors, so I opened the door. Please stop. Aren't you bothering the neighbors? Shut it. Isn't John here? If he's here, bring him out. He's here, isn't he? Just come in. You're causing a scene for the neighbors. Sitting on the living room couch, Tom and Linda desperately tried to persuade John, who sat opposite them. John, your home is that condo over there, right? Want to go home with Grandma? When John didn't respond, they accused me. You lured him away, didn't you? More importantly, how do you know this address? I never told you about my new condo. I staked out your office and followed you here. Figured you took John based on when you moved. Give John back! Damn kidnapper! John snapped at those words. I chose to come here on my own. She's been protecting me. I'm an adult, I should be able to decide where I go. At John's words, Linda's tone instantly softened, almost cooing. We were just worried. When we called your office, they said you quit. You changed your cell number and we couldn't reach you. That's right. Even if you're an adult, you're still my kid. Did you think we wouldn't worry when you suddenly disappeared? John let out a bitter laugh. You were probably just worried about the money, since it stopped coming in. What are you talking about? I've got way more money. I bought you that fancy condo, not some second-hand place. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. What's so funny? After having my laugh, I looked at them both squarely. To begin with, your plan was flawed. Just because one income increases, you thought you could ditch the other. Just how long do you think I've been working at my company, and how many raises do you think I've had? Proud Tom shot back at my mocking tone. But with just one person, expenses are less. Even considering the condo fees, it's not as expensive as that old apartment's rent. If you'd lived a normal life, 2 salaries and 1 pension would have sufficed. But wearing flashy suits, going out every night, how did you think you could sustain such a ridiculous lifestyle? The two fell silent. Though Linda looked bitter, I didn't let up. By the way, Tom, is your new girlfriend candidate pretty? Much younger than you? Or both? What? Tom's face paled. What are you getting at? With how much you resisted divorce because of what people might think, your new partner must be someone to be envied. I thought she might be rich, but considering how desperately you're chasing John, that seems unlikely. This was news to Linda, who was wide-eyed. You're not telling me you've been lavishing money on that woman. No wonder you stopped giving us money. So that's it. Enough! That's why I never introduced her. How long do you plan on leeching off your kid? John's exasperated look said it all. We stood up simultaneously. Can you continue this discussion in your luxury condo? If you linger any longer in our home, we're gonna call the cops. They glared at us, spewing curses as they left. The reason Tom had been so desperate? He'd been showering a young woman with money, and she mistakenly believed he was wealthy. Decked out in high-end suits and buying her anything, it's no wonder she thought so. Eventually, Tom, not able to win John back, fell into his old vices. Slots, horse racing, and various other gambles. As a result, he went bankrupt. Selling the condo might have been a solution, but he'd already taken out a substantial loan against it. He was dumped by the girlfriend, lost trust at his job, and now apparently lives in an even worse apartment than before. I knew all this because Linda came over with some sweets, complaining endlessly. She claimed she was apologizing, but it seemed her true intent was to live with us. I'll pay for my stay from my pension. Of course, we politely declined with a smile and sent her on her way. I'm home. Every time I come home, my son's smiling face greets me. Oh, welcome back. We've got beef stew for dinner tonight. Wow, you made dinner? Thanks. Yeah, I managed to get off work on time today. My son tastes a bit from the plate I hand him and gives a thumbs up, saying, This is good. Awesome. John and I, a close-knit father and son, are living a harmonious life. John has gotten a lot healthier, having recovered from some swelling issues. Can you pack lunch for me again tomorrow? I'm gonna wake up early and help out. You can eat out sometimes, you know? Nah, your lunches are the best. Saying that, John grinned like a little kid. I can't take it anymore. Get me out of this house. My mother collapsed at the front door, tears streaming down her face. What's going on here? Why are you treating Mom like this? She's not a slave, you know? Defending my mother, I raised my voice. My brother's wife was like, Well, isn't dealing with the unpleasant stuff part of your mom's job? I'm just asking her to do what she should be doing. That's it. Jessica is sick right now and she needs to avoid stress. Are you trying to pick on her like someone mean? Talking to my brother and his wife was useless. And sadly, my father was no different from them. When David and I complained to my father about the way he treated my mother, he snorted and was like, Well, why don't you two take her in? Amidst this, David stepped up and was like, All right, we will. Are you sure? Tears welled up in my eyes as I thanked him. As a result of taking in my exhausted mother. My name is Jennifer William, 27 years old, and I work for a company. I live with my husband, David. We've been married for 3 years and don't have any children yet. Currently, we live about a 30-minute drive from my childhood home. Back home, my father, who's been working for a company, my stay-at-home mom, and my older brother, John, lived together. However, recently, John got married. I may have been outdone by Jennifer in terms of getting married first, but my partner, Jessica, is 24, so now you have a younger sister-in-law. John said with a sheepish smile, and I laughed and blessed them from the bottom of my heart. I wonder if calling her sister. Should I just call her Jessica? And where on earth did you find a partner with such an age gap? Although John is a good person, he's quite shy and didn't have many relationships, even in his 30s. We weren't necessarily worried about him getting married late due to his age, but because of his personality, our parents and I were a bit concerned. Well, I actually met her on what you'd call a dating app. What? John, you were on one of those? This took me by surprise. Yeah, some guys at work made me do it. They said if I kept daydreaming, I'd be single forever, so they kinda forced me into it. And well, here we are. John said, blushing. I hear about those apps all the time now, but I never thought you'd use one. We gotta thank that coworker of yours. Well, that's the thing. Leaning in with a playful grin, John continued. Can you believe it? The colleague just wanted to see how it works and asked me to give it a shot. And now, he's saying he might register himself. Pretty rough, huh? Oh, using you as a guinea pig. That's just mean. Chuckling together with John, we were just glad everything turned out fine in the end. Later, we had a meeting with Jessica, who would soon become my brother's wife. I'm Jessica. Pleased to meet you. Seeing her say that and give a slight bow, our family was taken aback. She's unquestionably beautiful, but how should I put it? Despite being young, she lacked youthful energy. In other words, she had a kind of jaded look. The way she occasionally glanced sideways at us or flashed a forced smile with the corners of her lips turned up. If I had to be blunt, she didn't seem genuine. I met John and I feel so blessed. After all, I have such wonderful in-laws and, even though she's older, a lovely sister-in-law. I feel I've hit the jackpot. Her bright smile saying that seemed a bit insincere. It looked like my mom felt the same way, shooting me a complex look. But the men, obviously my brother, and surprisingly even my dad and my husband, David, were clearly smitten, grinning ear to ear. It was something. Thus, our first meeting with Jessica left us with mixed feelings. Not long after, my brother and Jessica got married. Their wedding went smoothly, and the already beautiful Jessica turned into an absolutely stunning bride. Jessica's parents seemed like ordinary folks, and we managed to interact with them just fine. At that time, it seemed like my brother and Jessica's married life got off to a smooth start. At least until they returned from their honeymoon and came to our parents' house. Instead of going to their rented 2-bedroom apartment to start their married life, they came straight from the airport, bearing souvenirs. And my brother was like, Jessica's pretty tired from the trip. We'd be grateful if you let us eat something here today. They stayed in the guest room, and it seemed they never left after that. Sorry. It was my first time traveling abroad, and I've got some serious jet lag. Jessica looked so miserable that my mom couldn't send them away. But after that, they showed no signs of leaving. I only found out about this 2 months after they returned from their honeymoon. What? They've been there the whole time? Apparently, Jessica's quitted her job and used our parents' guest room as her own, sleeping, waking up, eating, and bathing whenever she pleases. What on earth was happening? With my job and my own family, I hadn't visited my parents for a while, so I had no idea about this situation. My mom tried asking my brother about it a few times, but he was like, Jessica's just tired from adjusting to all this. Can you cut her some slack? Or do you want to be called a meddling mother-in-law who kicks her out? Even my dad was like, well, she's family now. Let's just see how things go for a bit more. Either way, it was hard to tell what was really going on from my mom's account. I promised to visit my parents' house to see the situation for myself and then hung up the phone. That weekend, David and I pretended to be unaware and visited my parents. I dropped by around 2 p.m. on Saturday. It shouldn't be an odd time. I've visited around this time before, sometimes leaving after just having coffee, and other times staying for dinner. Since I lived nearby, I seldom spent the night, though I did occasionally before my brother got married. As usual, I entered through the front door and headed to the living room where John was seated. Oh, John. You're here? How's married life? How's Jessica? I intentionally greeted my brother that way. Yeah, not bad. Jessica's doing good. Acting like everything was normal, John then folded the newspaper he was reading. Just then, Jessica mentioned she was hungry and descended from the second floor. Upon seeing me, she seemed surprised for a moment but then broke into a grin, not seeming embarrassed at all. "Oh, Jessica, you're here too? John, you should have told me." When I said that, John just mumbled something incoherent in response. However, Jessica was like, "Don't you know that? We decided to live in this house together." Without thinking too much. "John, when did you decide this? I didn't know that." When I asked John, instead of him, Jessica was like, "Well, with such a big house here, isn't it a waste not to live together? It's true that our family house is spacious. When they bought this land, the area was not as developed, so I heard from my mom that they got it for a bargain. Years later, with the development of a nearby train station, the property value soared. But originally, it was a more affordable area." "So, did you guys give up your apartment?" This was another concern. They had just signed the lease and probably hadn't lived there even a day. "No, I'm gonna use that place as my getaway. I mean, living with in-laws in the same house, you'd need some space to breathe, right?" I was left speechless by Jessica's rationale. "Dad, what's going on? Are you okay with this?" When I turned to my dad, he was like, "You're married now. Let me handle the family affairs. Mind your own business. We'll manage things with John. If you get it, just go home." Having been dismissed in such a manner, David and I reluctantly left my childhood home. Afterwards, I did keep in touch with my mom occasionally. As Jessica had claimed, it seemed like John and his wife really started acting like the house was theirs. According to my mom, they were treating her like a maid and getting increasingly unruly. What's more, it seemed my dad wasn't just turning a blind eye but was also being harsh with mom. I felt like I couldn't just stand by and watch any longer. David and I made plans and decided to head to my family home. Finally, on the weekend when we were all set, David and I visited the house. We knocked on the front door and waited for someone to answer. The person who came out truly took me by surprise. "Jennifer, you're here?" my mom said with a relieved look. Upon seeing my face, tears welled up in my mother's weary eyes. "What on earth happened?" "I can't take it anymore. Get me out of this house." Exhausted, my mother collapsed in the hallway, shedding tears. "Hey, what are you doing? We still have preparations to make. My friends are coming over tomorrow. We need to get things ready quickly." "Oh, Jennifer." Jessica said that as she chased after my mother to the entrance, looking surprised when she saw me. "What the heck is going on? Why are you treating Mom so poorly? She's not a slave, you know." As I defended my mother and said that, Jessica was like, "Household chores are her job. I'm just asking her to do what she's supposed to." "What exactly is she supposed to do? Prepare for your friend's visit?" Defending my mother and glaring at her, I asked Jessica, and she was like, "We're having a fan meetup at our house tomorrow. We need her to set up the venue and prepare the feast." Jessica smirked and said that. "Why does my mom have to do all that?" "Because, like I said, household chores are her job. You could do it by yourself." I shouted at her, and she was like, "That's cruel. John." And she quickly ran to another room and brought my brother. "Jennifer is trying to push household chores onto me. I have to live stress-free right now, that's why I quit my job." "That's right, Jessica's health is poor and she needs to avoid stress. Are you trying to bully her like an overbearing sister or something?" I felt that was the excuse to quit her job. "Where's Dad?" There was no use talking to this couple. Ignoring them, I entered the living room. "What do you want?" "Why aren't you stopping them? Mom's being treated like a maid." "That's just how it is." Dad sighed heavily and added, "Jessica is unwell. It's our duty as a family to care for her." This man, saying such things, isn't my father anymore. I intuitively felt that. Maybe he's also being troubled just like Mom? I hoped that was the case. I felt that way. However, my dad was just like my brother and his wife. Hey, she isn't helping with the preparations for tomorrow. What did you say? Upon hearing Jessica's words, my father walked past me, heading towards the front door with heavy footsteps. Why don't you do as Jessica says? If you can't do it properly, we don't need someone like you in this house. He yelled as if my mom was a lazy servant. David was shocked and shielded my trembling mother behind him. How can you say such a thing? She deserves to be told off like this. Take that back. She is important to us. David firmly told my dad, but he was like, I don't need someone useless like her. If so, you guys should take her in. What on earth has happened in this house? I was filled with shame and could only glare at him from the front door. Then, in the midst of all this, David was like, all right, we'll take her in and live with us from today. He said that. Really? Of course. Both my mother and I were tearful as we thanked David. We then quickly left our family home with my mom. David and I took her to our place and listened to what had transpired. According to her, at first, my father was quite troubled. But then one day, out of the blue, he began to treat her harshly. And together with my brother, the three of them started to boss her around. Both I and David had a theory about my father's change in behavior. And to confirm it, we set up a plan. It was painful to know the truth, but it was better than seeing my mother suffer indefinitely. We decided it'd be the best to face the truth and move forward. And, in just 2 days, we were able to gather the evidence we needed at our house. Let's go back to the family home with this evidence. David and I made the arrangements, and everything was set. With that, the three of us decided to head back to the family home. Well, look who's back. If you promise to behave from now on, I might let you in. My father said with a smirk, looking at my mother. Listen. You abandoned your duties as a housewife once. We can't have that again. Absolutely. My brother and his wife said arrogantly. I presented a tablet to the three of them. I wonder if you can still say that after watching this. The three gasped as they watched a video displayed on the tablet. To everyone's shock, it showed my father and Jessica in a compromising position. That's a fake! My father tried to snatch the tablet from my hands, but I dodged. I knew he was gonna do that. Jessica, with her face pale, glanced nervously at my brother. No way! This is one of those deepfakes Jennifer made, isn't it? Yeah, it is! Jessica desperately nodded her head up and down in agreement with John's statement. If you think so, then maybe you should listen to this next. I then played an audio clip from the tablet. It's a good thing we got rid of Mom successfully. Yeah, I thought if we pushed her around like that, she'd leave eventually, but she was tougher than I thought. The two chuckled together at their shared secret. Now we just need to make sure John doesn't find out about our relationship and keep it going. Absolutely. Since we can spend our days together, I don't think we need that apartment anymore. Surprisingly, it seemed my father and Jessica had been having secret meetings in the apartment they rented as a newlywed home. That's a lie! Jessica tried to lunge at me, but David stepped in to stop her. If you're saying this is also a lie, should we get an expert to verify it? You've invaded our privacy with cameras and bugs. That's a crime. When did you plant those? No, I didn't do anything shady. That's right, I hadn't planted anything. I have a smart speaker here that I set up for my parents. You know about it, right, Jessica? Yes, the handy device that can be controlled by voice. When I came here the other day, I simply changed its setting to monitoring mode. What? Jessica seemed to have enjoyed using the voice-controlled smart speaker for its convenience, but my main intention in gifting it was exactly this. So, I set it up to watch over my elderly parents. I can operate it from my device and turn on its video and audio recording functions in this room. I wanted David to somehow get everyone out of the living room, so I had him wait by the front door. But it turned out everyone gathered there on their own, making my task easy. I didn't know it had that function. That's sneaky. Who's the sneaky one now? I stared hard at Jessica. Dad, Mom says she's gonna divorce you, so let's proceed with the paperwork. I don't care. Do as you please. But don't think you can ever come back here. No, you've got it wrong. The one who's gonna leave is you. My previously silent mother spoke firmly to my father. Don't think I've forgotten that the land this house stands on is in my name. What? Jessica's eyes widened in shock. Why are you surprised? You have no stake in this house, do you? Of course I do. I'm the bride of this house. I have the right to live here. No, you don't. This is our parents' house, and this land belongs to my mother. You don't have an ounce of right to it. When I said that, Jessica clicked her tongue in annoyance and was like, Fine, John will inherit this place one day anyway. Then it'll be mine. John, let's go. But John was like, I think we have things to discuss too. To Jessica. With a pale face, Jessica was like, It's a misunderstanding, John. It's a lie. Please believe me. But it was unlikely John would ever trust her again. As a result, both my mom and dad, as well as my brother and Jessica, ended up divorcing. Of course, that video and audio recording were used as evidence to show the lawyer who assisted their divorce. Dad eventually admitted the property rights of our family home to my mom by division of property. Originally, the land was under my mom's name, but the house, being 35 years old, wasn't worth much, so that alone wasn't enough. On top of that, they drafted an official agreement that he would continue to pay the remaining amount in monthly installments. Dad moved to a small apartment, where he'll likely live alone for the rest of his life. That family property was originally bought a long time ago by my mother's father, in other words, my grandfather, for his daughter. My parents built a house there when they got married, and then my brother and I were born. Everyone thought of us as just a regular family, with a normal life. Nobody expected things to turn out this way. Our ordinary family was shattered because of one woman, Jessica, entering our lives. My brother also proceeded with division of property through their lawyer. Jessica's parents felt genuinely sorry, and both of them deeply apologized. From what I heard, Jessica had a history of flirting with guys from a young age. Her mom cried, saying that when Jessica announced she was going to marry a seemingly responsible office worker like my brother, they were relieved, hoping she had finally settled down. And I believe that initially, Jessica probably wanted to marry my brother for his steady income and desired a life without hardship. Her father pleaded with me to believe that. But she just couldn't hold back her true nature. True, I get where your brother and your dad are coming from. There's something about Jessica, I don't know, that draws men in. David added. Right, I remember when you first met her. You were all smitten too, weren't ya? I teased. Well, that was... I'm sorry. David admitted, looking embarrassed. Seeing David genuinely apologetic, all I could do was chuckle and forgive him. This ordeal made it clear to me that there really are such people in the world. Not defending him, but my dad wasn't the type to usually fall for women's allure. Even my mom acknowledged that. Yet, before we realized, he had fallen under Jessica's spell. And while my brother does regret bringing such a woman into our house and not supporting our mom more, it doesn't mean his actions are forgivable. My brother suffered how to pay for his sin to my mom. My mom initially kept a distance from my brother for a while, but she insisted that she wouldn't be able to move forward with mess. I'm really scared of how I was. Even when Jennifer showed me that video, I was still willing to believe Jessica, thinking it might have been a deepfake. If it wasn't for the audio recording and the voice match, I might have still believed her. Saying this, he looked sad. He was also like, if only I hadn't been fooled by her, things between mom and dad wouldn't have. He trailed off, guilt evident in his expression, before leaving our family home. He planned to live in his apartment for a while, then he's gonna put in a transfer request at work and move out of state. He hopes to start fresh there. Later on, David and I moved into the family home and decided to live there with my mom. We made the bold decision to renovate the house, transforming it into a two-family home. We also considered the future, making it accessible for everyone. This'll ensure a comfortable living for a long time. I said. Absolutely. Even though it's technically a two-family home, we'll always be close by. David added. Thank you. Mom smiled. She wanted to use the money she received from division of property for the renovation. My mom was like, every time I feel comfortable in this house, it might help me forgive John a little. My brother got transferred overseas, and word is he's reevaluating his life from scratch there. He seems to have met someone new, but he's unsure where it's headed. He's a bit hesitant about relationships now, but if he ever finds true happiness and wants our mother's forgiveness, he might gather the courage to visit. Dad continues his lonely life in an apartment. While he seems to regret his actions, we only occasionally send him pictures of the grandchildren. Even though he may have been a victim of a seductress, it's still hard to forgive him for what he did. From what I've heard, Jessica is now in a place surrounded only by women, where she can't lure men, but we don't care to find out more. Her parents assured they'll handle it. However the situation unfolds, she's no longer part of our family. Now, our home has grown, and 4 of us live together. Seeing my mom enjoying her time with her grandchild fills our days with joy. I hope this happiness lasts forever. I'm not just hoping. I'm determined to make it last. I believe this happiness is the best revenge against that woman, Jessica. Can you cover the dinner bill? You can't get this dish just anywhere. That's what my mother-in-law says as she charges an amount like that of a fancy restaurant, but the food in question was just everyday home cooking used for a work photo shoot. I was left speechless. I didn't want to deal with this kind of in-law family, but one problem after another kept coming. My name is Catherine Parker. I'm 29 and work at a publishing company. I chase the latest trends every day with my husband, Bob, who is a fashion magazine editor. We met during a work interview. When I was assigned to feature popular hair salons, I visited the top-rated ones based on online reviews for interviews. The most highly recommended was a certain salon. That's where my husband worked. The skills of the hairstylists were impressive, and it made sense why they were so popular. All the staff were so pleasant, and the treatment felt like it was over in no time. I loved the salon so much that I decided to get my hair cut there even after the feature was finished. During the interview, the stylist who answered most enthusiastically was my husband, Bob. We both found out we loved indie films and got excited, promising to go watch one together. That's how our relationship started, and within about a year, we considered getting married. But, little did we know, there were significant issues with Bob's family. Not just for us as a couple, but even my family got dragged into it. When we went to greet Bob's family, I found out for the first time that Bob's mother was a fairly well-known cooking influencer. Her YouTube videos, which taught old-fashioned home cooking recipes in a simple way for young people, had gone viral. Viewers seemed to love watching the graceful middle-aged mother-in-law happily teaching her young, inexperienced assistant. The comment section was filled with praises like, "I wish my mother-in-law was like her," and "This is way more helpful than imitating my nagging real mom." So, not knowing who she was hurt her pride. "Even though you're in editing, you don't know about me? You really should keep up." She looked annoyed, and I panicked. I was worried that I had upset my mother-in-law, but after sincerely apologizing, she was sweet for the rest of our visit. I felt relieved. My mother-in-law even encouraged our marriage, and I thought there wouldn't be any mother-in-law issues. But my father-in-law seemed more difficult. He just sat silently, sipping his tea. And when he finally did speak, he had concerning things to say. "You might want to think more about marriage." We were puzzled. What could be the issue? It's said that my father-in-law is stubborn and often frustrates both family members and those around him. If he's opposing without any particular reason, then we're at a loss. My husband frowned. "Why not give a reason? Mom's on our side. We're gonna get married." At my husband's words, my father-in-law grimaced and abruptly left the room. I stayed silent, but started to worry if he was dissatisfied with me as his future daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law looked at me and smiled. Don't worry. He'll come around eventually." Her comforting words touched my heart. My husband also looked at my mother-in-law with trusting eyes. It was clear that in this family, only my father-in-law was the odd one out. "I know it's hard with Dad opposing us, but we'll try our best to get his approval." My husband repeatedly assured me that there wasn't any issue. "Catherine is the one I chose. Dad has no right to interfere." I felt reassured by my husband's words. From then on, my husband and my mother-in-law persistently tried to persuade my husband. During this, my husband shared something with me. Dad suddenly said he wanted to talk without Mom around. Probably because he knew she'd side with Catherine. That's kinda petty. I felt the same way at that time. But it turned out, my father-in-law had a completely different reason. Finally, my husband declared that if this marriage didn't go through, he would remain single for the rest of his life. Only then did my father-in-law relent. And so, we made it to our wedding day. Our new home was in an apartment just nearby my in-laws' house, an apartment my father-in-law owned. We were filled with happiness. I resolved to do my best to get along with my in-laws and be a good wife. One weekend, my in-laws came to visit. Regarding our marriage, there's another piece of happy news. Actually, I'm gonna be producing a new restaurant. I genuinely admired my mother-in-law's talent. My husband was grinning with joy, but for some reason, my father-in-law wore a frown. It really put a damper on the mood. "Don't you approve? It's not fair to your wife if you don't," I blurted out to my father-in-law. My father-in-law let out a big sigh and muttered, "I'm going to collect some rents." With the family finally together, he selfishly took off on his own. Once my father-in-law was gone, my mother-in-law began to explain. "It's hard for me to say, Catherine, but I earn more than him and he doesn't like it." "I'm sorry." I shook my head. It wasn't her fault. It's ridiculous that a grown man like my father-in-law is being so petty and selfish. From what I heard from my mother-in-law, my father-in-law has a chronic illness and hasn't been able to work for a long time. Now, he just manages an apartment building they invested in. Growing up, my husband always saw his hard-working mother and felt lonely. He wished my mother-in-law could be home like the mothers in other families. My father-in-law was always home. But my father-in-law wasn't the type to play with him due to his illness. Over time, my husband came to believe that my mother-in-law had to work because of my father-in-law. Since my husband was young, he's had a resentment towards my father-in-law. "He's a grumpy old man. Just ignore him," he'd say dismissively. Even my mother-in-law didn't deny it. A few days later, my mother-in-law called. "Catherine, your family runs a sushi restaurant, right? Our place is a pretty popular high-end sushi restaurant. We've been featured on TV and in magazines more than once or twice. Currently, not only my parents, but also my brother and his wife run the restaurant together. If it were just like the old days with only my parents, I'd invite you over without hesitation. The second and third floors of the restaurant are living quarters. My parents live on the second floor, and my brother, his wife, and their kids live on the third floor." I mentioned that it's a bit hard to relax and visit often because of my sister-in-law and the kids. My mother-in-law responded, "I understand." She then asked various questions. Like where we source our top quality fish and how business has been. I casually told her everything I knew. "It'd be great if we could all visit sometime," my mother-in-law said. I told her I'd check our restaurant's schedule and get back to her. I didn't care much about my father-in-law's opinion, but I really wanted my mother-in-law to enjoy our sushi. Though our conversation seemed fine, for some reason, starting the next day, my mother-in-law began ignoring me. It felt like our frequent interactions had been a lie. Today, I messaged her before work, saying I was gonna stand in line at a renowned pastry shop and get her favorite jelly dessert my mother-in-law had requested, but she left my message unread. Later, after work, I reported back. Unfortunately, they were out of the jelly dessert, but would you like me to get some of the famous cakes instead? No matter how many times I messaged her, she didn't read them. Finally, when I tried calling, to my surprise, she had blocked my number. I was baffled since I hadn't done anything wrong. It was my mother-in-law who had learned about a famous pastry shop near my workplace and had insisted I get something from there. Despite that, she treated me this way. I felt a mix of confusing emotions. When I confided in my husband, he strangely blamed me, saying, "Did you say something rude to my mom?" I was annoyed. I was bewildered precisely because I hadn't said anything wrong. I was planning to gift those popular pastries. After all, we've always been indebted to them, and I genuinely wanted to please my mother-in-law. I worked hard to do so. When I got upset at my husband's harsh words, he began to suggest that maybe I was the one in the wrong. As I stayed silent, not understanding what he meant, my husband bitterly repeated what he'd heard from his mother. I told my mother-in-law that she's just an amateur with a tad bit of knowledge about cooking. She wouldn't recognize good sushi if she had it. She shouldn't even come to our restaurant. Apparently, I was accused of speaking ill about my mother-in-law. Apparently, my mother-in-law lied to my husband, painting me as the villain. Even when I insisted I'd never say something so terrible, my husband wouldn't believe me. I was baffled and overwhelmed, wondering how things got to this point. From then on, the spitefulness from my mother-in-law intensified. Although she works as a culinary researcher, my mother-in-law is incredibly stingy. For instance, she never shares the dishes she prepares for her shows with the staff. She packs everything into containers and takes it all home. Not just that, she also takes home any leftover ingredients or condiments provided for her. The staff are all taken aback, but they're too scared of my mother-in-law to say anything. After all, my mother-in-law is the kind of person who has no problem making abusive and bullying remarks. "I bet y'all can work just because I'm here." So, every day, we eat the dishes my mother-in-law prepares for her shows at home. Even so, it's just regular home-cooked meals. "You should be grateful you get to eat such a feast because of my hard work," she'd say. She always demands gratitude. My husband just nods in agreement, completely brainwashed by her. My father-in-law remains silent as ever. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. Once dinner is over, I'm ordered to do the dishes. When I finish and try to head home, my mother-in-law stops me. "Do you think you can just leave without paying? This isn't just any meal. It's special." Saying that, my mother-in-law extorted meal money from me. And it was an amount you'd expect from a fancy restaurant. I'm left utterly speechless. "Don't you dare tell Bob about this." My mother-in-law would always insist that I keep it a secret. I wish I could just cook myself, but my clueless husband was always in a good mood eating my mother-in-law's meals. "She makes a mean home-cooked meal," he'd say with a satisfied look on his face. It seemed he thought that since I was working and my mother-in-law was cooking, I should be grateful for having one less chore to worry about. "You should be more thankful to my mom," he'd tell me, dead serious. I tried to explain to him how cold my mother-in-law was to me and how I didn't want to go to their place for meals, but he never got it. The stress was piling up, leading to constant migraines for me. Then, a terrifying fact came to light. Right in front of my family's sushi place, my mother-in-law planned to open her own seafood restaurant. Of all places, why right in front of our restaurant? My mother-in-law seemed quite proud of her decision. After all, isn't this a neighborhood where even Catherine's family seems to be doing well? I bet I can do even better. This new seafood joint was aiming for the high-end crowd, the same kind our sushi place served. In other words, she planned to steal all our customers. How audacious. She had previously grilled me on our customer base, suppliers, and how well we were doing. Clearly, her intention from the start was to put us out of business. My parents confronted me, asking, what on earth is going on? How could she plan to open a seafood restaurant, especially right before us? They said, if someone in the family is opening a place near our store, the least they could do is give us a heads up or some sort of courtesy call, right? Indeed, they were right. However, I wasn't informed about any of this by my mother-in-law. Moreover, my father, with a bitter expression, said that's not the only thing. Can you believe it? My mother-in-law contacted our sushi restaurant's supplier and managed to get a contract for her own restaurant. But what's even more audacious is that she requested the seafood restaurant's purchased goods to be billed to our sushi place. I was floored. Is your husband's mother-in-law trying to ruin us? Distraught, I buried my face in my hands. Just then, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my father-in-law was standing there. I hope it's okay to come by. When I asked about the sushi place, they told me to find you here. Seeing my father-in-law unexpectedly made me nervous. But noticing my tense expression, my father-in-law said, "Catherine, I'm really sorry about everything." My father-in-law apologized sincerely. There wasn't a hint of the usual gruff demeanor I had come to expect from him. I was taken aback as my father-in-law began to share his story. Starting with an apology for his consistent rude behavior, my father-in-law opened up about the feelings he had been holding on to. He shared how he had always been sickly since his youth, making it hard for him to hold down a job. That's when my mother-in-law stepped up to the plate, finding work to support them. He was truly grateful for that. However, as she gained fame, my mother-in-law became consumed by greed. At first, I tried hard to reason with her. Being so obsessed with making money and thinking only of one's own success is just wrong. After all, my mother-in-law's career was built on the backs of her staff and assistants. He told my mother-in-law time and time again that she needed to value her team, or there wouldn't be a future for her. But she wouldn't listen. As her obsession with money grew, she also became more tight-fisted. She'd cut corners with expenses, preaching about using organic and pesticide-free produce while actually using cheaper imports from the local supermarket. Some of her more conscientious staff members spoke up about this, only to be met with my mother-in-law's wrath and bullying. This caused many of them to quit. My mother-in-law grew paranoid, thinking everyone was jealous of her success and out to criticize her. She was particularly harsh on younger women, often making them cry. My father-in-law could easily envision how my mother-in-law might treat any future daughter-in-law, and he was worried for me. That's why he had been hesitant about our marriage at first, knowing I'd be on the receiving end of my mother-in-law's nastiness. He had hoped to make my husband aware of my mother-in-law's true colors over time, but my husband always took my mother-in-law's side. Just as I had thought, my husband didn't listen to my father-in-law at all, so I had no choice but to give up. Because he couldn't work, my father-in-law always felt a sense of inferiority and wasn't able to build a strong bond with his son. From that point on, my father-in-law kept a close watch to ensure my mother-in-law didn't mistreat me. Is that so? I was filled with remorse. My father-in-law, whom I had mistakenly thought was just a stubborn old man, just laughed and said he did it on purpose so it was all right. It was my father-in-law who told me and my parents about my mother-in-law's sneaky tactics. Well, let's go deal with that wicked witch. At that time, my oblivious mother-in-law was visiting our sushi restaurant with some relatives. "I'm in a good mood today. Everyone eat up." She was ordering and eating high-end sushi one after another, treating her relatives to a feast. The relatives joyfully indulged in the sushi, and of course, so did my mother-in-law. It tastes just so. With this, my restaurant will surpass yours soon. After making quite a mess, my mother-in-law called my cell. "I'm at your sushi place right now. I forgot my wallet, but you wouldn't charge family, would you?" "It's a bit awkward, but mother-in-law, we've declined your supply contract." You could hear my mother-in-law gasping on the other end. She seemed stunned that we knew. "We're already at the restaurant. My father-in-law is here too. We've heard everything." My mother-in-law looked back. There we were, my parents, me, and my father-in-law, standing at the entrance. My mother-in-law put on a defiant face. "Well, we're using the same suppliers after all, and we're family. It's only right that you cover the cost." She charges us for meals, but when it's her turn, she expects it to be free because we're family? That's just too selfish of my mother-in-law. "If we're family, then our meals should also be free, right? We'll be needing a refund for all we've paid." My mother-in-law grimaced, showing her displeasure. How stingy can she be? That was special, high-quality stuff. You should be thankful you got to eat it because of me. My father-in-law chimed in with a look of disdain. The staff have all been saying the same thing. Evelyn insists that ingredients you can buy at any supermarket are high-end. Furthermore, she's such a miser that she takes everything home without leaving a scrap. My mother-in-law was shocked to discover not only that her husband knew about the supplier talks but also what the staff had been saying. And then my father-in-law dropped a bombshell. I'm fed up with your greed. And don't think I don't know about you stealing recipes from Mrs. Henderson. Wah! My mother-in-law was left speechless. She tried to remain calm, but her body trembled uncontrollably. It's all lies. Don't believe any of it, she exclaimed in a shrill voice. Previously, my father-in-law had been consulted by Henderson, the assistant. The assistant was distressed because my mother-in-law was presenting the recipes she'd thought up as her own ideas. She had said that she'd be content if she considered her a partner, but if she was to remain just an assistant, she wanted to be compensated for her recipe ideas. Upon hearing that, my mother-in-law was furious as if she'd been set on fire. How stingy can you get? No one would give a hoot if it came out under your name. Don't get ahead of yourself. The revelation left the gathered relatives in an uproar, knowing that Mrs. Henderson had been silenced by her. Do you all trust Mrs. Henderson and my husband more than me? That's ridiculous. That's when my father-in-law pulled out Mrs. Henderson's recipe book. I kept this just in case. It's undeniable proof. My mother-in-law gritted her teeth in frustration, but there was nothing she could do. To punish my mother-in-law, we had already contacted the company planning to launch a seafood restaurant. My mother-in-law's phone rang. Mrs. Parker, is it true you took Henderson's recipes? We're gonna postpone the seafood restaurant opening. My mother-in-law went pale. You're all so cruel. After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me? It's like you're all ganging up on me. She pretended to be the victim, sitting down on the spot and sobbing loudly. Ignoring her antics, my brother's wife presented the bill. Your meal comes to $982. At that, my mother-in-law threw a fit. Wait a minute, I'm your mother-in-law. Charging me? My brother's wife just chuckled at her. Paying for what you eat is just common sense. Even kids know that. Stumped by my brother's wife's logic, my mother-in-law was at a loss for words. Not willing to admit her wrongs, she looked around for someone else to blame and pleaded with the relatives. Can't someone else pay this for me, seeing how much I'm struggling here? Relatives quickly slipped away in hushed tones. Ultimately, the wallet my mother-in-law brought, intending to completely corner her this time, was used. The remaining amount was paid by credit card. My stingy mother-in-law truly hated parting with her money, shedding tears during the payment. In the end, still fueled by anger, I leaked tales of her greedy antics and her theft of recipes to the weekly magazine department at the publishing house where I work. In no time, the news went viral on TV and online. My mother-in-law's reputation as a culinary expert tanked, and my father-in-law decided to divorce her. Meanwhile, my husband, upon learning the truth, repeatedly apologized to me. He sincerely regretted not hearing me out. I asked him to reconcile with my father-in-law in return for my forgiveness. Mrs. Henderson, once just an assistant, was now in the spotlight, replacing my mother-in-law. Being naturally talented, great things are expected of her. Due to all the trouble she's caused many, my mother-in-law found herself swamped with lawsuits. However, unable to pay the massive amount in damages, she found herself desperately turning to her childhood home for help. She went to the extreme of relying on her elderly parents' retirement funds. When her relatives found out, she was disowned by her own siblings and family. She's currently working tirelessly as a night security guard at construction sites and as a janitor in office buildings. Upon hearing my side of the story, my husband realized his misunderstanding and finally apologized to my father-in-law. My father-in-law also regretted not mending his relationship with his son. So, the three of us decided to start anew, living harmoniously, putting behind the days of being manipulated by that selfish, miserable woman. From now on, we aim to be a family that genuinely respects each other. Marriage is like a graveyard, isn't it? It was supposed to be my big day, my wedding. Yet, out of the blue, my mother-in-law, Linda, started spewing ridiculous things. To make matters worse, she laughed arrogantly and threw water on my wedding dress. The atmosphere for the rest of the ceremony felt like a funeral, completely dampening the celebratory mood. The folks from William's family just stood there, snickering and watching the scene without stopping Linda. A year after that hellish wedding, I got my chance for revenge. My sister-in-law is getting hitched. Would you believe it? The date of her wedding is the same as mine. I'm thinking of giving her a taste of her own medicine with that life's graveyard comment. My name is Mary. I'm a newlywed in my early 30s. I had registered our marriage when I was 30, but the wedding was planned for 2 years later, once we'd saved enough money. My husband, William, didn't seem too interested in me. Whenever I tried to talk to him, all I got was, yeah. So, even when I had something I wanted to discuss, he wouldn't listen. For 2 years, I had to tolerate something. It was the harassment from William's family. Is it meat pie again today? Didn't you have a meat pie just last week? If you keep eating only meat pie, aren't you gonna lack proper nutrition? You should cook more balanced meals. It's not fair to son. Linda, my mother-in-law, would come over daily to inspect my meals. She never came in the morning, perhaps because William was around, but she'd always show up around lunchtime. I started living with William 2 years ago, and since then, Linda's been visiting every day. The reason? Our houses are incredibly close. Our place and Linda's are just a stone's throw away, about 50 yards apart. Many might be wary of living so close to their in-laws, anticipating issues. But I was completely fooled by Linda. Before our wedding, she was so sweet, always saying, "If you ever need anything, just let me know." Indeed, when I'd discuss issues about William, she'd respond, "That's not okay. I'll talk to him about it." She always seemed to care. That's why I thought living nearby wouldn't be a problem. But when the real life kicked in, Linda turned out to be a stereotypical meddling mother-in-law. It wasn't just about the food. She'd nitpick on how I cleaned the house, placed dishes, and all the minor things. At first, I thought, well, she's the elder, and complied with her requests. But when I mentioned this to friends, they were like, "That's not right. She's totally bullying you. She's nitpicking for no reason, just to annoy you." I hadn't known the bullying by a mother-in-law really happened until then, so I decided to look it up online. When I did, I found stories that mirrored what I was going through with Linda. So this is what they call bullying by a mother-in-law. That's what I thought. I decided to no longer take everything Linda said to heart. "This dish isn't good. It needs to be less salty." No, William's job is physically demanding, so he needs a bit more salt. He loses minerals when he sweats. The moment I decided not to let Linda dictate everything was the first time I think I ever talked back to her. After that, maybe she didn't like my attitude, and she started visiting less frequently. Now in our 2nd year of marriage, we were set to visit my in-laws for Thanksgiving Day. Since Linda's visits had become infrequent, I thought it would be good to show our faces. Being the holidays, my sister-in-law was also home. She had been living with her boyfriend since college, coming home only during extended breaks, making her visits special. But this holiday was different. There was a growing animosity towards my sister-in-law. For some reason, William had to work during the holiday, so he would be joining us later in the evening. I received a call from Linda telling me to come early and prepare the meal, so I went shopping at the grocery store and market early in the morning and arrived at the in-laws' house around noon. Upon arrival, my sister-in-law was already there, sitting at the table with my father-in-law and Linda. I assumed they were having lunch, and when I looked, there was clearly some expensive sushi. "Oh, you're early. There's none for you, so you better start preparing dinner. And it better be better than this sushi." "Come on, Mom, don't be so hard on her. But please, make a nice meal." My sister-in-law's makeup was heavier than before, and she got her nails done. I knew she had a job, and I wondered if those nails were suitable for doing daily chores. It was clear that Linda and my sister-in-law intended to annoy me, but I didn't care since I had eaten a delicious poke bowl during my shopping trip. I did as I was told and started cooking. But then I overheard them saying, "Isn't she super unfriendly? She's always been like that. William should have married someone cuter. Well, at least the makeup helps a bit." The three of them were speaking their minds. I was a bit hurt, but I couldn't let them see that. If I showed them I was upset, it would just make them happier. By evening, when William arrived, for some reason, there were barbecue platters on the table. I made dinner just as I was told. "Why are these here?" To which I got the response, "Did you really cook anything? You came in the evening and didn't do anything. What's this supposed to prove?" Roast chicken, salads, and a beef stew that had been simmering for hours should have been in the fridge. I opened the fridge, but it was empty. "Hey! Don't go rummaging through someone else's fridge." I realized I had been tricked. After I had finished cooking, I went back to our house to fetch something I had forgotten. I thought a few minutes would be fine, but I had underestimated them. I didn't know who did it, but I suspected it was Linda. Both my sister-in-law and father-in-law were smirking at me. They probably all knew Linda had thrown out my food. It was so frustrating. I never told William about the way I felt or the troubles with his family. Then, on our second wedding anniversary, we decided to have a wedding ceremony. Surprisingly, William seemed excited about the idea of a wedding, and he helped out with everything, from choosing the dress and venue to creating the guest list. Of course, his parents were on the invite list. I figured it was a wedding, so they wouldn't cause any trouble. Boy, was I wrong? On the wedding day, I regretted being so naive. The ceremony began with the gathering of attendees, and then it transitioned into the reception. After changing outfits, we headed to the place. When I met William's gaze, he was staring intently at me. "Is there something on my face?" "Oh, I had to reapply my lipstick earlier." "Is it smudged?" I asked, but he didn't respond. After a moment's thought, he whispered, "You look beautiful." I never expected to hear those words from him. In the 2 years since we married, no, considering the 5 years since we started dating, William had never called me cute or beautiful. The only times he really made me feel special were when he confessed his feelings and proposed. I was distressed about his family's behavior, but that one sentence from William made me feel like the wedding would be a cherished memory. Then, we started having dinner. Glancing over to where his family sat, everyone looked casual, but they seemed a bit loud. Those around them were constantly looking their way, and their laughter was audible even from where we were. It was unsettling, but I felt relieved when the staff intervened and they quieted down. Then, it was time for the first dance. However, that's when things took a turn. We danced, and everyone at the place started dancing following us. And my in-laws reached us. I thought to myself, just keep a smile on, just for today. Thank you all for coming today. As I told the grateful feeling to them, Linda suddenly threw her drink towards me. I was taken aback, but the screams from those around me brought me back to reality. Looking down, I was drenched. Confusion swirling, Linda, laughing loudly, proclaimed, "Marriage is the graveyard of life, isn't it? Ever since they got married, my son's become so distant and she doesn't even cook him decent meals. If this isn't a graveyard, then what is?" She continued. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, but she simply responded, "I feel sorry for my son." My sister-in-law and father-in-law standing next to her were laughing as well. The whole hall was abuzz, everyone unsure how to react, when William suddenly spoke up. "Enough is enough." Never had I heard such a loud voice from the usually calm William. And I bet others hadn't either. They looked furious. "I've been patient enough. Leave now." Grabbing Linda's arm forcefully, he began dragging her out. "Ouch, ouch! Don't do that!" Linda cried out, but was ignored and led outside the ceremony hall. My sister-in-law and father-in-law hurriedly followed. Concerned, I went after them, and outside I saw William sternly telling them, "I'm cutting ties with all of you. Don't ever interfere with Mary and me again. Can we talk? Yeah, let's not let your emotions get the best of you. William, please calm down. Despite their collective pleas, William ignored them all. He shoved them into a cab and sent them home. I was dumbfounded by the scene, but William came over, saying, "I'm really sorry. I didn't want our special day to end up like this." The reception couldn't continue in such an atmosphere, so it was cancelled. The guests were treated to sweets instead. Back in our private room, I honestly struggled to grasp the situation. Sure, the wedding being ruined was a shock, but I hadn't expected William to get so angry. "Why were you so mad?" "I thought you weren't that into me," I remarked. He looked a bit sad as he replied, "Can't blame you for thinking that. I'm just bad at expressing my feelings." As we talked more, it became clear he wasn't ignoring me. He was so smitten that he'd often get lost gazing at me and miss out on what was being said. He'd nod in response just so it didn't seem like he wasn't listening. "What? It was like that?" I couldn't help but be shocked. Moreover, William was aware of the harassment from my in-laws. Seeing me not discuss the harassment, he'd occasionally warn his entire family about their behavior. I hadn't noticed any hint of this at all, but now that I think about it, there were times when the harassment seemed to stop. "I told you when I proposed that I love you, Mary. That's never gonna change, and I promised to make you happy. This ain't exactly happiness though." That day, we both cried until the morning. For the next year, William tried his best to ensure I didn't have to face any difficulties. Thanks to his efforts, my stress was reduced a bit, and knowing William was on my side gave me strength. However, the harassment from the in-laws didn't stop. Moreover, they'd target times when William wasn't home to come over to our place. If we didn't respond, they'd leave snarky letters in our mailbox. Even if I tried to avoid them, such days continued for a while. I was sad that the in-laws ruined our wedding, but I was happy that William had always been by my side. And for the first time, I realized how comforting it was to have just one person on my side. Since then, William seems to have kept his distance from his family, but they frequently try to get in touch. However, neither of us responded to them. Then, there was news that William's sister, Lily, was getting married. The wedding was planned for a few months later, and without learning from the past, they sent us an invitation. Despite being frustrated at the insensitive sister, I came up with a plan. When I discussed this plan with William, he said, "Sounds good. People might talk, but remember, I'm always with you, Mary. Just let me know how I can help." Honestly, I was hesitant about executing the plan, but hearing that from William was reassuring. A few months later, I decided to execute the well-thought-out plan. We both attended Lily's lavish wedding. And I held on, waiting for the right moment to put my plan into action. I had given a DVD to the event staff beforehand, asking them to play it once I signaled them during the speeches. Lily had requested a speech from William, but when the time came, he didn't stand up. Seeing the staff flustered, I stepped up. "May I take his place?" Lily and her parents were taken aback, but the atmosphere didn't allow for them to say no. I opened up the prepared podium and stood in front of the microphone. "I'm truly happy for Lily's marriage. However, previously, your family used to say, marriage is a graveyard. What do you think about that? I never thought marriage was like that, but I never imagined you'd do something like that." As I raised my hand while speaking, an image was projected on the screen behind me. It was footage we had taken, thinking we'd watch our wedding ceremony later. The video showed Linda, my mother-in-law, pouring water during the dance, and my father-in-law and sister-in-law laughing at the scene. The nasty words of Linda could be heard as the audio played back. From this footage, maybe marriage really is a graveyard. Or perhaps, getting involved with the family feels more like a graveyard. The next video showed my mother-in-law and sister-in-law harassing me. I secretly recorded it with my smartphone, thinking it might be useful someday. I never thought it would come in handy in this situation. My husband and I will cut ties with his family. I apologize for ruining the important wedding ceremony. But we wanted you all to know what kind of people they are. Excuse us. Ignoring my furious in-laws and sobbing sister-in-law, I left the venue. Outside, William, who had left as part of the plan, was waiting for me.
You did great. How about we go grab something tasty?
After eating, we headed home. The next day, we received numerous messages and calls from Linda and Lily, but we didn't respond. However, after countless calls, we decided to pick up once. On the other end, Linda was furious.
Where the heck are you right now? I went to your place, and some strangers are living there.
It seems Linda came over to our house, realized we weren't there, and gave us a call. It was evident strangers would be there. After all, we had already moved out. William had suggested it when we planned to play the footage at my sister-in-law's wedding. Since we live close to our parents' place now, if we're gonna cut ties, maybe we should move somewhere they won't find us. Knowing them, they'll probably come to our house. I totally agreed with William's idea. William had been considering changing jobs, and the timing seemed perfect. He started job hunting while I searched for a new place to live. Both the job change and the move went smoothly, and all that remained was to attend my sister-in-law's wedding. After achieving our revenge, we headed to our new home, where we had already moved our belongings. We hadn't told anyone we were moving, and the new place was so far away that you'd have to take a plane. We believed there's no chance the in-laws would visit. However, to be safe, we had asked our neighbors not to tell anyone our whereabouts. As expected, Linda tried asking around, but nobody spilled the beans. Even though I wasn't saying anything, Linda kept talking one-sidedly.
Are you listening? If you moved, just say so. What are you gonna do about us now?
Linda was referring to the monthly allowance we used to send. Both William and I had decent incomes, and we had been sending money to the in-laws every month. I knew at some point that they were using our money for fancy sushi. But since I hadn't discussed it with William, he continued to send them the allowance. But after this incident, I told William everything, and he decided not to send any more money. We had been giving them money even before we got married, but after our wedding, our combined income gave us some financial comfort. William had consulted with me about the in-laws facing financial difficulties. I had agreed to increase the amount and continue the monthly allowance even after our marriage. However, in reality, they weren't struggling at all. They just made us send money so they could live lavishly. As the years went by, they saved less and could no longer live solely on their pension. In the end, it seemed they were relying solely on our allowance. Whether they realized its value after it was gone or whether they were genuinely struggling, they demanded,
"Send us money, and tell us your new address."
We had no intention of telling them our address, let alone ever meeting them again. I hung up the phone from Linda without saying a word. After that, whether I blocked her number or not, she kept sending me messages to see how things were going. According to the messages, after Lily's wedding, her fiancé had apparently confronted her quite harshly. Lily's fiancé was what you'd call well off in general terms, and my in-laws were expecting some financial support from him. However, once he found out about the incident at my wedding, he was furious and demanded to know what had happened. Lily claimed it was all Linda's doing, but there was footage of Lily laughing along. The fiancé declared he couldn't marry someone like that, breaking off their engagement. Naturally, the talk of financial support also fell through. The flustered family was expecting some financial help from us, but since we found out that the money was being used for luxury, that plan failed. Lily, who had been living with her fiancé, was kicked out and now lives with her parents. She had planned to be a homemaker after marriage, so she had already quit her job. So now, their income is just the pensions of Linda and my father-in-law. Knowing them, they probably don't have much savings. But the land where their house stands is quite spacious, so I guess selling it could fetch a decent amount. As a result, my in-laws decided to sell their home. Though they moved to a small one-bedroom apartment, for some reason, Linda keeps sending me detailed messages about their situation. Is she trying to guilt me into sending money? I don't feel sorry for them, and when I talked to William, he said, "It's annoying when they send messages like, 'Don't you feel bad for us?'" As for William and me, we were engrossed in our new jobs in a new place. William had switched jobs. And I set up a new company. A matchmaking agency. The incident with my in-laws was the catalyst. At the matchmaking agency, it's crucial to vet potential partners and introduce them to suitable matches. Dealing with my in-laws made me realize the importance of family. Even if someone seems perfect, their parents might not be. Having been through it, I believe I offer sound advice to those who come to the agency. Sometimes, they may need to be prepared to cut ties with their parents. In fact, almost everyone who found a partner through the agency has thanked me, saying things like,
"I'm so glad I joined this agency. I had some non-negotiables, but I realized that if I changed, it wasn't a problem. I talked with my parents, and we agreed that we need some distance in our relationship."
In fact, keeping some distance has helped many daughters get along with their mothers.
"I owe it all to your advice, Mary,"
many have told me. Yet, while we're busy with our work in this new place, I sometimes wonder about my in-laws. I occasionally feel curious about how much they might be struggling now. But no matter how big their issues might be, we've decided it's none of our business. So, I plan to keep their number blocked, and I have no intention of reading any future messages from them. I'm aware that the events at the wedding have had a profound impact on my in-laws. But that's a result of the choices they made. William and I are living the life we chose for ourselves. And we believe that's what matters most.